Welcome to the 2021 Ford Explorer, the King Ranch Edition. In 2020, I actually checked out the Explorer ST, the performance model, and this King Ranch, in my opinion, for 2021 and up, huge improvement. This is definitely the model to get, in my opinion. And I'll go through this and I'll talk about some of the changes made for the 2022 Explorer as well. I also went to a dealership and I tested the 2020 Explorer XLT with the 4-cylinder engine. And the main things I've noticed between the 2020 and this 2021 is this is just a much more tighter vehicle to drive. It just feels a little bit more buttoned down, a little bit more precise, if you will. And I'll talk more about that in the driving segment, but let's get this out on the road and let's talk about the exterior and what's new. Yeah, definitely more than enough for most people. So for 2021, the big changes are the addition of some new colors, some new wheel options, and I think they made the heated seats standard on the XLT trims. They added the heated steering wheel as an option on more lower trim levels, and of course they added the King Ranch as the top level choice amongst the Explorer range. Now, the Platinum is also like a fully loaded Explorer, but this King Ranch is kind of like that more cowboy themed fully loaded model, if you will. So if you don't like the cowboy and the W's and everything that they have going on here, you don't have to get it. You can get a Platinum and you're still getting a fully loaded near $60,000 Explorer. As you see it stickered here, it's about $59,000 for this King Ranch. You save about $1,000 if you went with like a Platinum, and this truly does have everything on it. It's got the 4-wheel drive and all that. But anyway, for 2022, one of the things to keep in mind is if you go with either the Platinum or like this King Ranch like you see here, you actually get an updated power figure. You will be getting about the same amount of horsepower as the ST, which is around 400 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. This model, this 2021, produces 365 horsepower and 380 pounds-feet of torque, just so you know. But that's all with premium fuel. Keep that in mind. This vehicle does get excellent fuel economy, but it's mainly achieved, all the power figures and the great MPG, it's achieved through premium fuel. And overall, in terms of the looks department, you know, after it got redesigned, I really do like the way that this Explorer looks. I think it's got a nice chiseled design going on here. Even the 18-inch wheel options look good on this. But this King Ranch has a 20-inch wheels wrapped in 255 wide Michelin tires in all 4 corners. A lot of people, they get out of your way thinking you're a cop. So if I were to buy an Explorer, it's got to be in either white, black, or blue, and probably install push bar or whatever that black grill thing is that cop cars typically have in the front. I would install that in the front, and it's just hilarious the way people get out of your way or slow down. Usually it's obnoxious when people slow down, but not in this case. It's just entertaining to watch it happen. Tell me in the comments section below how you like the way that this vehicle looks. Let's kind of move on into this driving aspect. And as I already mentioned, we have here the 3-liter EcoBoost engine producing 365 horsepower and 380 pounds-feet of torque for this application in 2021. And as I already stated, the power figure goes up for 2022 if you were to order that. But this is more than enough. Even the 4-cylinder had great thrust. It was just the lack of smoothness with the 4-cylinder, but I feel like they've probably fixed that by now, because I've driven a Bronco with the 4-cylinder, the big one, and I really appreciated that. I really liked the way they had that engine and the transmission tuned. So test drive one for yourself. I think that's really one to consider. And also we have here the 4-wheel drive. One of the other new changes is, like, if you got the new ST or something, you now have the ability of getting it with rear-wheel drive, and you can also get like these Platinums and these King Ranches in the rear-wheel drive as well, which could be fun, but really, in my honest opinion, I think getting it with 4-wheel drive is the best use of your money, because I feel like most people, when they go to purchase this thing used, I think it'll just retain more value that way. It pulls well both on the low end, like when you're doing some city driving, and also out on the highway. So you have plenty of thrust to work with, but the main improvements for me is with the handling demeanor and with the ride quality. I like just how much more tightened up the steering feels It's not overweighted, it's not super light, it's right where it needs to be, and it doesn't feel floaty, ponderous, or weird to drive. It doesn't lack confidence. In fact, it's got plenty of confidence. I really like the way that this thing drives and handles. The ride quality is very compliant, but it doesn't jostle you about, it doesn't move you around when you go over bumps. You notice the bumps, like, well, I shouldn't say you notice it. You just know what type of terrain you're driving over. And that's one of the things I really appreciate with Ford products. When they nail them, they really get it right. They get the feel right anyway. It lets in just enough of the outside world without feeling fatiguing. It's just very communicative, and it's a very positive thing for me. And that enhances the confidence that you have in the vehicle because you know what's going on. And overall, I think they've done a fantastic job with the suspension setup, and I think the 20-inch wheels is also a great wheel size to go with this. I think 21 is a little too much. 18s, you don't have to go that small. I think these 20s look great, and they ride perfect as well. And one of the biggest advantages to this is just how quiet this is. Like, even when you get this thing up to some speed, the stability is great. And we're doing a healthy speed. You have to be going very quick to even get any form of like wind buffeting out of this. When you do like kind of casual city speeds, this thing is so quiet. You only get a bit of subtle, slight wind buffeting, okay, very natural amounts, as well as with the tire noise. There's hardly any tire noise until you get it like past 75 or 65, 70 miles an hour. That's when you kind of notice a little bit of that humming effect, but it's really nothing crazy. It's right where it needs to be, especially for a vehicle of this type. And as I just demonstrated, yeah, high-speed stability is fantastic. It gets up to those speeds effortlessly. It never feels nervous. That's the best part about it. When you're driving it hard, when you're like flooring it through corners, or when you're out on the highway, it doesn't feel like you have to come off the throttle or anything like that. Another thing I really appreciate with Ford's larger vehicles like the F-150s, this Explorer, and like the new Bronco I tested, it's just how small they feel to drive. They do a great job nailing the seating position. So you have a great view out of this vehicle, both from the front, the rear, the side, all of that. The mirrors do a great job. But it doesn't feel massive. So it's not stressful to drive, and also the 10-speed automatic, in the past, it used to gear hunt a lot. Now it's, you put your foot down into it and it kicks down into the right gear. You do not have to be in the sport mode. In fact, I don't even like using the sport mode. That's when the vehicle begins to feel a little strange, because otherwise, as you see, I don't really have any complaints about this vehicle. I've actually enjoyed myself in this vehicle. I didn't enjoy myself in the ST or the XLT that I tested. Both of those vehicles they're really compromised. But Ford is a lot like Toyota. They keep making these subtle changes every year. So keep that in mind. The vehicle might look exactly the same from the outside, but the driving improvements that they make, whether they disclose them or not, it's there, and it makes a huge difference in the way that the vehicles drive. Now, keep in mind, this is the 3-liter EcoBoost V6, right? It gets about 20 in the city and 28 on the highway. That's what this particular model is rated to do. There is also a hybrid model that you can also go with, which is a 3.3-liter naturally aspirated V6. I think it gets about 27 in the city and like 29 on the highway, but that drops pretty drastically when you get the 4-wheel drive. So honestly, I don't really think that's worth getting, but that engine does have both direct injection and port injection. Whereas these EcoBoost engines, like you see here with the ST and this King Ranch, they only have just direct injection, but not like you're going to be keeping this thing long term anyway. This is kind of a vehicle that you're going to be upgrading every 3 to 4 years. So yeah, I might even just skip that and just get the 4-cylinder. But again, let me know if they've tuned that right, and if you've test driven one, or if you own a 2021 4-cylinder. And also the brakes, very linear, very progressive. You do have to get in on them a little bit more to come to a halt, but I actually like that. I don't have an issue with it. But yeah, from a driving standpoint, they've done such an excellent job. I do have gripes primarily with the interior segment, and I'll get to that in a little bit. The other main thing is price, right? Like I already mentioned, dude, this is like almost $60,000. That's not chump change. Granted, people who buy Fords actually have a lot of money, and they usually cash out on vehicles like this. So that is what it is. But you have competition in this space, okay? You have other 3-row SUVs like the Kia Telluride, like the Highlander, like the Mazda CX-9s. But what's kind of the main difference between those vehicles and this? One is towing. This vehicle does legitimately tow pretty well, I guess. About 5,300 pounds for the 4-cylinder with the tow package, and about 5,600 pounds, that's the maximum tow rating that you can get when you go with one of these 6-cylinder engines with the tow package. Whereas like the Tellurides, the CX-9, stuff like that, they typically tow like 2,500, 3,500 pounds. It could be important to some of you, but that's just one change right there. But fully loaded, something like a Telluride, a Highlander, one of those vehicles, it's about $47,000 to $50,000. Whereas this, you're probably going to be getting like a limited 4-cylinder for around that price. So this is a huge premium, but keep in mind, you're getting a very powerful vehicle here with the EcoBoost 3 liters, especially for 2022 with 400 horsepower. That pretty much annihilates all of the little CUV things I just mentioned. And this is also built on a rear-wheel drive platform, much like the Durango. So now you know what the differences are between those 3 rows, but now compared to the Durango, because that's the only other kind of rear-wheel drive kind of SUV in this segment, right? This type of unibody segment. If I were to get a Durango, it's got to be at least the RT trim level, nothing below that. Because the Durango will actually tow a lot more than this. But the thing is, the Durango is a pretty not a very fuel efficient vehicle. Whereas this, even when I drive it more aggressively, I'm still getting like 17 to 18 mpg, and it's rated to get around 20 in the city and 28 on the highway, and that's actually pretty accurate. And also, there's almost like a tightness to this new Explorer compared to the Durango. I drove a base model 2021 Durango, and it felt a little bit more floaty, more so than I would like it to. I feel like the RT would be the optimal choice. It would be a little bit more tightened up. Again, there's going to be like that fuel economy penalty there. So I think we discussed this vehicle pretty in depth right there with the driving dynamics and with the competitors. Let's go ahead and let's transition over into this interior segment now. Alright, so now that we are stopped, let's go ahead and let's talk about this interior space, because as a whole, I do like this cowboy themed King Ranch edition. If I were to choose between this and the Platinum, I would definitely choose this. I like the weird kind of W's, which is, I think it's supposed to represent like a rattlesnake or something. But whatever it is, I like the color scheme, kind of like this darker brown with the lighter brown interior. I think it just kind of pops in here. They used about a little over 85 square feet of this leather in the interior of this cabin space, and it's like hand stitched. Just a little fun fact for you. It's pretty tightly put together. There's not any real creaking and rattling going on here, so that's pretty good. But there are some misaligned gaps here where the wood paneling is, and some plastic bits, of course. But again, I don't mind the plastic as much as I do the misaligned panels. Plastic is fine. It's a commonly used component in an automotive interior, so that's not the issue here. But aside from that, everything else is really well done in here, because you have like this leather stitched dashboard and stitching going across the front here. That's great. And also we do have double pane glass here in the front, and that definitely adds to just how quiet this machine is. The Bang & Olufsen sound system, I think aside from the bass trim, this 12 speaker Bang & Olufsen is standard for every other trim level. Now, I don't know if this B&O is actually an updated version of even that for the King Ranch and the Platinum models, but you do get some form of a B&O sound system in just about every trim level of the Explorer, except for the base model, as I already stated. The switch gear feels fine in here to use. I like the actual use of physical buttons for the climate control, for the volume knobs, things like that. You have heated and cooled seats here with the heated steering wheel. All of that works really well. This seat gets so hot you have to eventually turn it down because this thing gets piping hot. I feel like it's gonna brand me with that W logo. It gets so hot. But yeah, anyway, at least it works, and you can just tone it down when it gets a little too hot for you. But I'm sure everybody's biggest gripe is this 10.1-inch vertical screen. Really a stupid decision on Ford's part to do this. I have no idea what they were thinking, because that 12-inch screen that they use in the F-150 and the Bronco that I tested, I love that. It is so well implemented into the dash of both of those vehicles, and it's so quick to respond, easy to use, looks great, the layout is perfect. Whereas this, highly compromised. First of all, it doesn't even react as quick as the 12-inch screens found in the F-150 and the Bronco. There is occasionally some lag, but overall, I always like the Ford Sync systems in terms of how easy it is to use. Everything is logically laid out, so that's not really a problem. But the problem with this vertical screen is, like, when you put the vehicle into reverse, this car has a backup camera and a 360 camera, all great features, but it's way smaller to use because of this vertical screen. It doesn't, it can't use the entire real estate of the screen to show you your backup camera and the 360 camera. There are other companies like Volvo that use a vertical screen layout, but they have a much better implementation of this. I wish that they would do a mid-cycle refresh to update this interior space to match kind of like the driving demeanor, right? That improved driving demeanor. If they just improve this infotainment, have that 12-inch embedded display into the dash, that would be fantastic. But it's not like you can't deal with this. It's not like a big deal, I guess. I mean, it's got the Apple CarPlay, the Android Auto. It supports Waze as a navigation system in this. So you have some pretty decent features here. And another thing to note, it's the safety features. This King Ranch has a slew of them, and it all works fine except for the lane keeping assistance. Very annoying. In the past, it wasn't this intrusive, but now what they've done is the steering, it'll actively kind of steer the vehicle into the lane for you, but it's too aggressive and it vibrates like crazy, so I'm not a huge fan of that. Before, it was kind of like a subtle vibration. I didn't really mind it as much. But fortunately, you can turn off the lane keeping assistance. It's not through the touchscreen. To turn off the lane keeping assistance, there's a button at the end of this turn stalk here, this turn signal stalk. You press that button and it turns off the lane keeping assistance. That's how you do it, just so you know. You do have some convenient features like the automatic headlights, 3-way memory seats in the front, one-touch up and down windows for both the front 2 windows here, but not for the rear. No idea why. Even a brand new Corolla has one-touch up and down windows for all 4 windows. You have 7 different drive modes that you can play with, but again, the normal mode is my most favorite. The full digital gauge cluster is actually really well sorted here. Looks pretty nice, quick to respond. The gear lever knob is excellent. It's so easy to use. I wish more car companies would just adopt this knob system for the gear lever. You have a wireless charging pad here for the King Ranch models, and you also have plenty of space up front here, a little cubby space where you can put another phone, and you have your USB-C port, USB charging, and there's also a little slot where you can put a phone up here vertically. I can actually fit my iPhone 13 Pro Max in that slot, so that's great. And you have 2 cup holders, plenty of space in the center armrest and in the glove box, as well as in the door pockets. The sound system is okay. It's getting better and better every year, this Bang & Olufsen. It's still not amazing, but it's pretty good. There's plenty of bass here, that's for sure. So I had to actually turn that down. And the clarity is also pretty decent. So there's that. You have some paddle shifters that you can play with, a total waste of time. The automatic mode is the best way to drive it in my opinion. And you have a fairly large panoramic sunroof, but it does not extend into the 3rd row, but it does into the 2nd row. Let's go ahead and let's transition over into that 2nd row seating there. We have the captain's chairs back there. Honestly, I don't really get the point of captain's chairs. I would honestly just prefer to have the bench seat in the 2nd row. I think that's the most practical way, and turn this into a 7-seater as opposed to a 6-seater like you see here. But many people seem to like it, so there you are. It's pretty adjustable back there. You have your little armrest. You can move it forward and back, and the seats back there are heated, and you also have a sun blocker shade. It's not automatic, it's just manually operated, but you do have it. It's a great thing to have. And you have your own HVAC to play with back there as well, with 2 cup holders in the center. So 2nd row seating is fine, but in the 3rd row, it's definitely tight back there for adults. I am 5'11". Getting in and out of this vehicle is really easy, and sitting behind myself is fine until I get into the third row. The biggest problem with the third row is the floor height is so high, my knees are like up against my face. That's kind of the obnoxious thing there. I could move the second row seating a little bit more forward, but then I wouldn't have the luxurious leg space I would like to have. So I mean, yeah, you can technically put adults back there, but it's really best for children, if I'm going to be honest with you. The best thing though is to get this as a 5-seater and then put the third row seats down, and then you will have plenty of space. You can definitely lug around a ton of stuff back there. Let's just wrap this video up. As a whole, yeah, I really enjoyed driving this car for a week. It's, you know, it's a connected experience. That's the thing I like about Fords. Like when they nail it, they really get it right. Like with the F-150, their Shelby Mustangs, and now this Explorer. I mean, it's all really well done. The new Bronco. Because if you've driven a lot of new SUVs lately, you'll notice just how detached they are. And this is not like that, but it still manages to give you the comfort that you need to not feel fatiguing, if you will. You can do a lot of miles in this, and it never gets annoying, while still giving you some driving pleasure. So I think Ford really nailed it with this one. I'm so happy to see them improving these cars because a lot of people buy Fords. It's a vehicle that sells in spades. You know, people like GM and the Dodge and the Rams and all that, you know, and they even have cute little sayings like Mopar or no car, but people love Ford. Okay, I mean, you misunderstand. Like, people worship Ford in this country. You know, it's almost like Apple, right? They have that type of a following. I'm glad that they're not just passing off junk to us. They are actually improving these vehicles, and I can even recommend this vehicle now to people. It's definitely something to consider. Put it on your short list. At least try and test drive one if you can. So hopefully you found value with this review. Thanks again for watching. Take care and goodbye.